Buckle up is all I can say. Another day, another royal connected to Jeffrey Epstein. We are in part 2 of our multi-part series analyzing the royals who are named in the newly released documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. We have already talked in part 1 about Prince Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, the new revelations about him, and we will revisit, don't worry, I do have more to say there. But today I actually want to go over to Scandinavia and talk about Crown Princess Mette Marit of Norway, who I think is a close second for most mentions in the Epstein files behind Andrew. Her name appears more than 1,000 times in the files. We are now being made aware that maybe the palace's past explanations and apologies for Mette Marit's connection to Epstein were not entirely truthful. This is reaching crisis level. And it comes at a time when the Norwegian royal family cannot afford another crisis. This is Mette Marit's son. Now, he is not royal. He is her child from a previous relationship. He is on trial in Norway this week on 38 charges, including, pick your poison, rape, domestic abuse, violating a protection order, and he was arrested this past weekend on new charges. Many are now asking if the Norwegian royal family will survive this moment in its history. The current king of Norway, King Harald, is 88 years old, making him Europe's oldest reigning monarch. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention, do you recognize this one? This is Martha Louise, the princess who married the shaman, the documentary, yeah. She is Håkon, the crown prince's older sister. She cannot inherit because of their laws. That's another video. But this is all happening in one family. Where to begin? I don't think I'll be able to go through all of the emails for you, but Norwegian media are doing a fantastic job at reading through them, explaining them in context. Fire up Google Translate, get on that, it's fascinating. Mette Marit married Crown Prince Håkon of Norway in 2001. Now, she did not have the background that most people would assume a royal bride would have. She was involved with multiple men before her marriage. Some of them had been to prison, there were drugs involved. She did overcome that hurdle. But in 2011, she was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein through Bill Gates's longtime advisor, Boris Nikolic. He wrote to Epstein in February 2011, "Where are you March 20th or so? A friend of mine is visiting NYC and I think it would be great that we meet. She is great. Twisted." This is a quote. "There is then a winky face. Twisted." To Bill Gates's longtime advisor. He finishes, "Not typical royalty." We then embark on a journey. This is where I have to say, buckle up. There are dozens, probably hundreds of emails between Epstein and Mette Marit between 2011 and 2014. Remember that date. The palace will claim at some point that Mette Marit and Epstein cut off contact in 2013. That is not true. The emails in the newly released files prove otherwise. There are also phone calls alluded to in their emails. We will never know, of course, what went on in those phone calls, but the emails themselves are troubling enough. The most shocking involves her son, Marius Borg Høiby, who at the time was 15 years old. Also, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and I do not care. Mette Marit wrote to Epstein about her son, asking if it was, quote, "inappropriate for a mother to suggest 2 naked women carrying a surfboard for my 15-year-old son's wallpaper." Jeffrey Epstein, reasonable king, I guess that's where we're at in this story, responds, "Let them decide. Mothers should stay out of it." In another email, Epstein tells Mette Marit that he's in Paris on a wife hunt. She seems shocked by this. Tells him that she thinks Paris is good for adultery. "Prince Håkon, do you have a lawyer?" He also writes to Epstein that Scandinavians, are better wife material. But who am I to talk? Yeah, I know. Reference is made to lunches, meetings, dinners, flying to each other's cities to meet. Now, I will say, Crown Prince Håkon and Epstein do not ever seem to be introduced because Mette Marit mentions that it's a shame that the two have never met. Messages do suggest that she and Epstein are very, very close, intimate even. She tells him at one point, "You always make me smile. You tickle my brain." In other messages, she calls him soft-hearted, very charming, and such a sweetheart. The emotional intimacy and leaning on him is something I find so interesting because we now have 2 examples of royal women for whom this seems to have been the case. Sarah Ferguson was the first, and don't worry, we have new correspondence between her and Epstein to go through. But the judgment seems to just go out the window once Epstein is connected to these high profile and powerful women. Like, you would think as a crown princess, as a duchess, you would be very cautious about what you are saying and to whom. That does not happen when Epstein is in your DMs, apparently. Mette Marit also writes to Epstein that she is bored by her royal duties. There is also one exchange where she complains about not being given a free upgrade on Air France, so she has to lay in the aisle to sleep and F's up her back. But the worst, to royalists at least, is that she came for the Grand Duke and Grand Duchess, as they are now, of Luxembourg. She called their wedding boring to Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm just imagining her like on the BlackBerry under the table at the wedding reception, being like, oh my God, this is so boring, get me out of here. She writes, it was like some kind of old movie where you know the characters are not hanging around for much longer. I don't know what you mean by that. And you will not insult my girl Stephanie like this. There is more. I do urge you to go suss it out for yourself. It's being kind of put out there by Norwegian media. But let's talk about the palace's response to this. Back in 2019, because this is not the first time that we have been made aware of Mette Marit's connection to Epstein. In 2019, when he died, let's not go there, and the media was picking up on his connections to powerful people, Mette Marit's connection to him was made public, and the palace did address it at the time. Mette Marit did give a statement in 2019 minimizing the extent of her relationship with Epstein, claiming a lack of knowledge of his crimes and saying that they broke off contact in 2013. She says, I should have investigated his past more closely and regret that I did not. Now, two things. Number one, Mette Marit did Google Jeffrey Epstein. And we know this because she emailed him about it. In 2011, she told him she had Googled him and that it didn't look too good. Smiley face emoji. In fairness, the email did not specify what she had found during her search, but he had already been to prison. He had already served a sentence for sex crimes. So presumably, if you're a crown princess, someone could have found that out for you. Smiley face emoji. Also, you could probably just know if you have good morals that Jeffrey Epstein is not a person you should be associating with. But the Norwegian palace was sitting on something else in 2019. The knowledge that Mette Marit had spent 4 nights at Jeffrey Epstein's Palm Beach, Florida home. Now, he was not there at the time, but they do speak about this in their email correspondence. He talks about it being a good trip for her health, because she is very candid with him about her health struggles, about the fact that she smokes and knows she shouldn't. She has pulmonary fibrosis now. That was diagnosed in 2018. The palace in 2019, I would say it's reasonable to claim, led us to believe Mette Marit and Jeffrey Epstein had a personal but professional relationship. It is now so much clearer that it was intimate, it was very personal, not professional in the slightest. You tickle my brain. Come on. The palace has been asked about getting the dates wrong, saying she cut off contact with him in 2013 when it was actually 2014. The communications manager out of the Norwegian palace said, unfortunately, we remembered the exact time for this a little incorrectly. That is through Google Translate, but you can get the gist. He went on, we explained in 2019 that one of the meetings with Epstein took place at his place. Regarding the year, we have already apologized. The last meeting was in 2013, but the last written contact was 2014. So much to say, and I am somehow running out of time. Mette Marit has apologized again for her connection to Epstein. It's not doing it for me. She says, quote, Jeffrey Epstein himself is responsible for his actions. Not a strong start. I must take responsibility for not having investigated Epstein's background more thoroughly and for not realizing sooner what kind of person he was. I deeply regret this, and it is a responsibility I must bear. I showed poor judgment and regret, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I will need to make a part 2 about this one because the implications that this could have for the Norwegian monarchy are so much bigger than this alone. The Norwegian parliament is meeting today to take a vote on whether the monarchy should continue. Now, this is routine. The move is not expected to succeed, but I wonder if the numbers are a little different this time around.